Hey, this is Malika of Evanston Live TV, and I have with me a special guest. Gentlemen, we just had such a pleasant conversation before the camera came on. This is Third Ward Alderman candidate. Do we say aldermanic candidate? Candidate? Nick Korzeniowski. Welcome to the show, Nick. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so I have been reading up on you. You're running for the Third Ward Alderman. Now, the last time the election was ran and there was a candidate for Third Ward going up against the incumbent, Melissa Wynn. You know, his take on it was, well, there's not much you have to do in the Third Ward compared to other wards. So really you're looking at more as the whole city, what your contribution will be to helping the entire city of Evanston. So what are your thoughts on that for the Third Ward?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me tonight, and thanks to anybody watching. It's not every day you're lucky enough to live in a town that's so politically engaged as to have opportunities like this. So really is a treasure to have, and I do thank you for hosting it. I think I'm not going to disagree with the fact that the Third Ward tends to not have the same structural, big ticket issues, but that doesn't mean we can't leverage that fortune, that good fortune, and be leaders for the city. One of the big pieces of the platform that I've been espousing so far has been about tackling the affordability crisis. You wouldn't necessarily think that the Third Ward is ground zero for that, but that is a very real issue here in the ward, and there's no reason why the Third Ward can't lead on that topic for the whole city. So there are ways to take issues that are not maybe as catastrophic here as they might be elsewhere, but hey, take the opportunity, show the way forward. And if you're fortunate enough that it's not a showstopper, that X, Y, or Z is taking place in town or in the ward, okay, fine. Do the good work anyway and show folks how it's done. There's, it's not either or. You can still do this in real good progressive ways and show the way forward.
Yes, yes. So I was reading that you come from the world of technology.
I do.
From the world of technology, and you've worked with in the school system. You actually ran for District 65. So what do you bring into the city of Evanston, as well as the Third Ward, with your background?
Sure. So with and anybody with little kids in school right now knows what it's been like to have an all remote life, and then to have little ones who have an all remote life and education on top of that. My youngest is a special needs student at Lincoln right now in kindergarten, and I don't know what we do without Lincoln there. I'm just fortunate enough to also work in a K-8 school district. I have various districts around the area. I've worked for about 10 years now. Right now I'm in Skokie with mine. And the reason I bring it up is because there's a real lived experience that I've got on both sides of that issue right now. Is just, how's your day-to-day look when everyone's remote, and you may not be able to accommodate that at home. You may not be able to make ends meet the way that you used to. You may not, the struggle it's myriad. It covers our whole lives. And I think my family coming up, we've got the kindergartner, his little brother is, he's going to be 3 in March. We're, in a very real way, we're here to stay, right? And we live that in a way that, that technology really is necessary. It's part of that life, right? Even right now, we're speaking over the who knew what Zoom was 10 months ago, right? Like, right. Well, right. I'm the guy that knew what Zoom was 10 months ago. I'm the guy that can actually be present for these kinds of needs as they come, that doesn't stay confined to technology. That's the benefit of it to getting involved politically here is I'm essentially always on call right now with my own school district. And, you know, obviously with 65 as well, but if I wasn't available at the drop of a hat, I wouldn't be able to facilitate what our lives are like right now. So that's kind of baked into the pie with me as a candidate, right? Like my ability to engage and respond actively and quickly and comprehensively is something that you know, it's a price of entry thing that you just get in my experience, let alone in my candidacy. And I hope that answers your question at least a little bit.
Yes, 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 it does. I mean, you're bringing, well, the world of technology, it's allowed you to have a flexible schedule. You've been working in the school districts. So you're bringing what you just said spoke volumes. Because one, you're talking about, you showed some passion about people just trying to survive what we're going through right now. So you're acknowledging that like it's rough out there for people, and you're saying that you have it to answer to those people. So yes, you did answer my question. So with all that is going on, Nick, and I mean, just say you're alderman tomorrow for the third ward. You know, the third ward might not be experiencing some of the same struggles that others might be experiencing during this time period right now. But I'm sure everybody's impacted, everybody's affected. How would you answer to those who are really scared right now? I mean, really scared. Like they may not have tons of money saved up, you know, and their house might not be paid for, you know. You know, you have residents in the third ward who live that reality where their property is paid for. It was probably passed down from family members. You know, they might be struggling a little bit, but they're okay for the most part to get through this second wave of COVID. But you have a lot of people in Evanston who do not have that kind of setup. What do you say to them and your alderman?
Well, the first thing I would say is that I probably get that more than you may expect. You know, I'm fortunate enough to have a very flexible professional life. You know, well compensated. The family's doing well. We've had our share of COVID scares, but we're all doing all right. I rent my place. I lease my car. I know I am going through the struggle just like anybody is going through this struggle. I am by no means looking at any part of my life and going, well, at least that won't get touched by this. It's all present in my own life. So I understand that, you know, the third ward sort of has and not two halves, but there are sort of two different largely comprehensive walks of life. One is, you know, hey, I've come up already. I already have, you know, my finances together. I've got my professional life together, my family together, and I'm just trying to get by. Then you have folks on the other side, maybe a little younger, like myself. I am a millennial. You know, there are folks out there that would still call me older than dirt, but they are wrong. I am. But those struggles that folks like myself coming up with, they need to be spoken to directly. They need to not be, you know, folks like to talk around these kind of issues a lot, and I get it. It's uncomfortable. It's not real easy to talk about somebody's trying to make ends meet. No matter what it seems like some days, you think you got it all together and you get a phone call that some bill you totally forgot about is now coming down and it's just not in the budget. And that's a real life in the third ward, believe it or not. And to folks that are living that life in the third ward, I would say I see you, I hear you, and I'm with you in living that. I'm not just, you know, writing it down and taking it to heart. It's in my heart. I'm one of those guys with right alongside you, you know. So I think those struggles are not unique to any small percentage of this ward, myself included.
What would be some of the solutions to what's happening right now with people economically just trying to stay above water in some very uncertain times?
So I think there are definitely certain things we can do as a city right now, and they may seem small in the overall scope of things, right? You can take a look at a massive city budget, and this kind of stuff will probably not even show up. But if you're struggling to make ends meet and you forgot about your wheel tax, it matters. It's going to hurt.
Wheel tax.
It's going to hurt. Or even street cleaning, right? Like we've just recently started doing street cleaning twice a month instead of one time a month. When I was circulating petitions, this is it's a dumb story, but please humor me on this one. I'm the weirdo with a mask and a clipboard during a pandemic knocking on doors. And I see a parking enforcement vehicle come by and they're ticketing for the new street cleaning schedule. And I ran up to him and said, "What is that street cleaning schedule anyway? Just in case I don't want to get a ticket." And they had no idea. And not their fault, new ordinance or new schedule or whatever you want to call it. But it speaks to the larger issue that I talk about with affordability, that the cost of living in Evanston is very different than the cost of rent in Evanston. And it seems like a lot of folks, they tackle affordability as if hitting a certain number of affordable units in a development is the whole show and you're done. And that's just not the case. So as a quick thing that we could do to help right now, we could put things in place such as graduated fees and fines based on means. You know, we always hear about means testing benefits down to folks. What about means testing penalties out from folks? You know, if I'm living on the lake, your parking ticket probably isn't going to hurt me like if I just got my first car and I bent over backwards to do it. So we can do things very quickly. For example, you could waive your wheel tax. You could waive parking fees, which to be fair, a lot of this stuff was done under emergency conditions, but I think we could structurally institute this stuff so that if you're an up and coming family, you're not going to see certain things, not because we decided to give you a grace period, but because we decided to give you grace. There's no reason why, if you go out of town and somebody decides where you're parked is going to, you know, be a no-go for the weekend because of whatever, but you're out of town, who cares? You're getting ticketed. You could waive those things. The city could. You could paint lines on the street for street parking and save people on their commute. Just little things like that would help folks on even just their peace of mind in life. And to me, these are all low-hanging fruit sorts of things. They're not going to radically alter anybody's life one way or the other, but they'll help. They'll add up. Who's not stressed out right now? Be a little less thing off of you that you could do right away. And I imagine the pushback against it would be that the city counts on this kind of stuff for funding, which I think is morally wrong. It seems that a lot of the city budget, the gaps sort of get filled in by penalizing folks for living here. You know, you're going to be ticketed. Street parking in Evanston is going to happen a few times a year if you're doing a great job a few times a year. And those tickets are the things that keep coming up when we talk about filling in budget holes. So to me, we could just stop penalizing folks for living in Evanston. That would be a start. we don't need to be doing all this nickel and diming on folks, largely folks who cannot afford it.
That's interesting you bring that up about the ticketing, because I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in the 3rd Ward, and he's actually going to court tomorrow because he got a parking ticket because they changed the sign overnight, and he had no idea. He just thought it was the same, street cleaning schedule, and they changed it on him, and with no notification. How would you go about notifying residents? Because he received no notice. He was like, there was no notice. There was no new signs or anything.
So I even, one of the folks that's working with the campaign right now doesn't live in the 3rd, but had parked his car, was going out of town, called the city up and said, guys, I understand that you might stick a little picket sign down where I'm parked. I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks. You could, in theory, need that space. I'm literally not going to be in the same time zone. I can't help you. Please don't ticket me. And to hear it from him, the answer was, you're out of luck. If that happens, you're getting ticketed. There's nothing you can do about that. A little ridiculous, but that sort of thing, like if you're going to be ticketed and there's nothing you can do about it, that is not, that the impetus is to say, oh, you should have done X, Y, or Z to get out of that. Well, no, he did. And he still got his ticket. And if you're, if you're looking at a situation like this where you can't get around it, the way that I've been getting around it, honestly, is and I hope she doesn't watch this because she might kick me off of it, but I'm accidentally on Alderman Fleming's mailing list, even though I don't live in her ward. She contacts folks when the street cleaning schedules change. She lets her ward know about it. So I know about it. And so you take it with a grain of salt. I'm not in your ward. It's probably not exactly the same, but I at least know that a change happened. And so I can go and research on my time for that. I should not be expected to do that, though, as a resident of my ward. So, you hypothetically talk about Alderman Korzeniowski tomorrow. There are rules that I'm not sure I really understand about how frequently you can contact your own constituents. But this would be one of the things that I would use that on. This is people's bottom lines. And for some reason, it's commonly seen as going without saying that folks' pocketbook is what really is, at the end of the day, the brass tacks that they care about. But we seem to not concern ourselves with it when it comes to these sorts of things. Well, you can tell, there's nothing wrong telling people, hey, the street cleaning schedule just changed. You ought to know. This seems like even a strange conversation to be in. Like, why would that be a big deal to just tell somebody that the street cleaning schedule's changed?
When those parking tickets add up and you get a boot and they've changed how boots are given or what qualifies you for a boot, oh, trust me, it changes your life. You are messed up for a couple days trying to get your car out of pound or something, it adds up, and it's an inconvenience. But even, we're talking about parking tickets, but that's like a couple arguing about spilt milk, but they're really arguing about something more serious that's taking place. So with the parking tickets, what do you think is the biggest issue here with residents and how the city deals the residents in terms of the nickel and diming and oftentimes inconveniencing? What are some of the bigger issues outside of the 3rd Ward? Because it's some issues going on and people don't feel heard. They don't feel like people are really understanding, especially during this time period that we're in.
Exactly. And stop me if I'm jumping the gun on you, but I think what you're sort of leaning into here winds up being a discussion about the city budget at large. I feel that it is not a terribly controversial thing to say that the reason ticketing, fees, all of that sort of stuff is the way it is because the budget is the way it is. And the votes for the budget are the way they are. Mm. And, you know, in this last budget, which I personally consider a travesty, Northwestern University owes over $600,000 on their fire bill right now, just to our fire department, who's already bent over backwards for us, offering things like furloughs, and then they're not even getting paid what they're owed. That $600,000 is bigger than the hole in the budget.
Northwestern owes money.
Yeah, so and I might not be 1,000% accurate on numbers right now, but they owe about half of their fire incidents have been paid for the past year, and half have not. That half that have not, about 600,000 and some change. That's the budget hole, plus $100,000 and some change. You don't need to go playing with people's bottom line on parking tickets. If you just have people pay their fair share up front, and I understand that there's a whole political hurdle to making Northwestern be, you know, good neighbors that way, but come on. I mean, the alternative is asking those who can give the least to give the most. I don't see that as another option between the two things. So if I'm talking a different topic than you mean to, please let me know. But I feel like these small potatoes things are how we're trying to, you know, disregard the 800-pound gorilla in the room when it comes to our budget. I see it as punitive. I see it as ridiculous. And I see the solution just sitting here the whole time. You know, just have folks pay what they're owing. You're good. You don't have to go raising taxes on people. You don't have to go, you know, playing political games with people's bottom lines, with people's lives. And I hope I'm responding to you. I really hope I'm answering your question. Before I get caught up in myself and start, you know, wonking out about the budget, I think that's really where this whole conversation ends up, is being not fiscal, you know, the fiscally responsible folks in town are the ones nickel and diming us to try to fill in the holes that are created in our budget by our fiscally responsible folks in town. Like, I'm not sure I want to play that game with these people anymore that think that we can somehow keep doing things the way we have been. And there are some hard conversations to have, but we ought to have them.
Northwestern has definitely been a topic among Evanston residents. Many people are just very angry, like you can't even say the word Northwestern. People are like fired up about it. Pretty much what you're saying, like Northwestern could give so much instead of them constantly taking away from the residents. So I mean, if you were made alderman, how do you get the other councilmen to agree with you? Because I'm sure there have been other aldermen up there who feel the same way. But you have some aldermen up there who are like, no, we're not messing with Northwestern. Those are our friends. We're going to get the money from you instead of them.
Absolutely.
So how do you fight that system? That's a system going on there.
It is. It is. I first of all, I think one of the great things about being in such a politically active community as Evanston is that our fights they're never the small town fights that they might seem to be. There's always a truly righteous fight to be held, and it just takes the political courage to do it. And I understand that an institution as heavy as Northwestern can make that really difficult to do, and it obviously has in the past. I would hope the Third Ward traditionally has a pretty good relationship with the First. I would hope that my voice would mean something more than, you know, just activist Nick Korzeniowski saying things. I would hope that my voice on the council would actually carry a little weight here, that have the conversation. It's not I think that's really where folks stumble, is even getting started. Because if you start that conversation, there's no defense for not paying your bills to the fire department. There's no righteous cause against paying what you owe. And if you started that conversation, there's nobody in the room that's going to come back and say, well, they should just not pay their bill. Nobody's going to say these things. It's that they don't want to get stuck in a situation where they publicly have to admit that it's indefensible the way that Northwestern's been comporting itself with the rest of the city. So you're absolutely right. It's a terribly difficult thing to do politically, but what I've been saying to folks lately is, it's about time. There's this, just looking at the number of candidates running in the city right now, it's about time for change in the city. And if that wasn't something the whole city didn't think of, we wouldn't see the election that we're shaping up to see here. So I think this moment is the right moment to have those conversations. I think it is the right moment to start taking dangerous, courageous, bold, maybe even foolhardy steps forward. But you know what? We need to do it. We can, Joe Biden does not command Build Back Better, right? Like, we can do that here too. We can show the way forward for everybody. We already are with the reparations committee. We can be leaders in the third for the city. The city can be leaders for the country. We just need to have the courage to do this kind of stuff. And yeah, it's going to be hard. It sure is. But this is kind of what I live for. So I'm up for the fight.
Well, you sound very passionate about it, because you're like, look, I'm living it. I can understand. I relate to, what's taking place, not just in the third ward, but for what's going on in the city. So people do appreciate that. And I think what people are really wanting right now are fighters. So you have Biden and Kamala, people see them as fighters against a system. So I guess really the conversation is with the city manager's office, because that's pretty much where the decisions are made. So, say you're alderman tomorrow and you call a meeting with Erica Storley, or have you had any meetings with either Wally when he was city manager or the current city manager, Erica Storley?
I had met with Wally on a handful of occasions. Didn't know him terribly well, but yeah, we had met a few times. Just here and there about the different work that I've done. Nothing to write home about, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I've not met Erica Storley. I've obviously seen a lot of Erica Storley. I've just not met the woman in person. Mm-hmm. I feel that the process by which she stopped being interim and started being the city manager was a true, honest to goodness scandal in a way that we don't normally see in, it's the sort of thing you'd expect it out of Chicago, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. That's not to disparage Eric Storley as a human being or something like that, but I think the process was absurd on its face. I think, for the council to offer a transparent public situation or engagement in that hiring process, and then to take it back, and then to try to walk it back again, and then to sort of, well, we didn't really mean it. It's like 18 hours or something like that after the public got to see finalists, a decision was made. Mm-hmm. That whole process to me was unacceptable. I personally feel, and this is personal, I'm not putting this out on literature to hand around town or anything, but personally, I feel like if you were on the side of that process, you have disqualified yourself from public service. That was awful. Now, where we are though is with city manager Erica Storley, and it is incumbent on her to listen to the needs of the city. Her job is to obviously do the work of the city manager, but that guidance as to how, I feel just as a quick example of the current budget, I feel that rather than the city coming to Ms. Storley and saying, here here are our priorities, here are our goals, how do we align to this? It was more of a, here's what we're going to do. And here's where the fringes and frills on that are, and we can talk around that. But the meat and potatoes of this budget are sacrosanct according to the city manager. That seems on its face wrong to me, not in a, in a catastrophically large kind of a way, but I think that conversation is just right out of the gate the wrong conversation to be having. The city manager should have a cordial relationship with the council, but at the same time, the city manager should, kind of use guidance of the council's goals to build budgets, to inform the way that the police is structured, things like that. Yes, the city manager ultimately has that authority, but I would hope that Ms. Storley would very seriously take into consideration the guidance, the advocacy, and the cause of members on the council.
Mm-hmm. Well, the city seems, well, of course, every city wants to make money. I mean, they have to make money. So in your conversation with her, what could be some solutions to where she can pull money from to help us during this time period? As
Make
opposed to
university pay tax.
Okay.
I don't think that's a difficult conversation to have with the city manager. I feel that she would immediately say that's a non-starter, at which point I would say, okay, let's audit the police budget. These are conversations that don't happen. I don't know why they don't happen. I can guess, but I don't know. These conversations need to be happening. And if they're uncomfortable, I'm sorry, but sorry, not sorry. They should be uncomfortable. And it's about time we had them. Right now, if not now, when?
I'm sure a lot of people are going to like hearing that. They're going to like hearing that. I think a lot of people would agree with you, definitely, on that. Which brings me to the police. You brought up the police. What are your thoughts on police reform? I won't say defunding, even though I just said it, but that seems to be such a controversial word. So police reform in Evanston.
Sure. So I think one of the first things that we need to acknowledge is that Chief Cook has been, in some real important ways, he has been an improvement. He really has. And I say that now because I don't want to sound like I hate the man by the time I'm done speaking. He's done a lot of really good work. But every time I've seen him pressed on these issues, I don't see an answer come back that I find sufficient. There have been cases where he has been asked, where in your budget do we have drones? I was helping with a Black Lives Matter rally over the summer in Fountain Square, and I heard a drone overhead, look up, yep, there's the drone, okay, whatever, somebody's taking photos. Turns out it was the police. And when asked, hey, that's a nice drone you had. What, it's just for photos for the press? Those things are expensive. Where is that in your budget? And kept getting referred back to the public budget book, which is very comprehensive. It's like every little last account they've got is in that book, right down to like shoe reimbursement, I think, has its own account in there. Very, very, very thorough. But there's nothing in there about a drone or a taser or less lethal munitions or lethal munitions. Like those things somehow aren't in there. And the answer to why not never really came out. And so to me, I'm like, well, okay, if I don't have a clear answer as to how relatively small things like that factor into a relatively large budget, let's look at the whole large budget. What else isn't in there in the way that we expect it to be? Why are shoes reimbursed at all? Why, vehicles, we just, I think it was 20 SUVs were in that new budget. Was that necessary? Can we shave some money out of that? Can we have a conversation, please, about, since we're going to exhaustively show every single account in the police budget publicly, can we go over every account and see where some savings could come out? And I think the answer is obviously yes. The issue then is, where do you draw funding out? And frankly, I don't see a lot of goodwill coming in that conversation, truth be told. Just I don't think that's going to be a terribly cordial conversation to have, but the way I see it, the fire department bent over backwards without anybody asking them. They came to the city like they owed us something. So why are we going to the police like we owe them something? They should be accountable. Everybody should be accountable. The police are no exception. And I think that entire budget should be looked over. And that, to that end, that includes, you know, there are some, I don't need to tell anyone that's really active in town, there's some officers on the department that right now they're not getting the praise they deserve either. Like they're not just, you know, we're going to slash and burn this budget and that. Like there are some folks that kind of are earning their keep more than they're being compensated for. There aren't entirely negative things that come out of an audit like this. And so the hesitation to have the conversation at all seems kind of myopic and, you know, horse blinders and that kind of thing. Folks like to glom on to the politically hot topic. You said yourself, you know, with the word defund, you know, there's a very human compulsion to get the easy answer or the easy buzzword, and now you know the whole topic, and now we're done with the conversation. And public service isn't easy like that. A police budget, especially of this size, isn't easy like that. It shouldn't be. So yeah, it's going to be a really boring and technocratic and wonky conversation to have, and it's going to seem boring to most folks, but you know what comes out of it is real good structural change. And for those that are looking for places to shore up a budget, this is exactly how you do that. We're sort of saying right now, we have all these budget holes and we'll do anything to close them except all the really obvious answers. Well, that's weird. Why? Let's talk about the really obvious answers. I don't see this as controversial, but I do understand it will be difficult. But this is the work that we need to be doing right now.
Yeah, sometimes I think to the residents, it just seems so simple to us. Like this is the logical solution. This is the answer. How come we're not doing that? You know, and it just racks my brain. Like some of the decisions that are made, I'm like, why? How did they come to that? I don't even understand. We only got you for about 5 more minutes, Nick. So to our guests, if anyone has any questions, you can either raise your hand or you can type a question in the chat and I'll read it. And I will read it. Well, Nick, this has been great. Talking to you here, because I wasn't too familiar with you or your work in the community, but you've been out there. You have been out there getting active with the district, the school district. You care.
I do, and just to send praise where it's due, some of the most recent work I've done is with the South and Evanston Association. I want to give a shout out to those folks. They really do care about the preservation of our historic sites, our lakefront, the environment. Climate is a really big issue for myself. I know I'm not alone in that. Mm-hmm. Those folks are really there for it. They were, and more so than that, they were really there for Harley Clark as well. Those are a bunch of neighbors that really care, and they deserve a shout out for that. And as well, the folks at Indivisible. Once upon a time, I was on leadership for the Evanston Indivisible chapter, and they're still going strong. They're still putting up the good fight. We just had, you know, the certification of the fruits of all that work. These people deserve to, you know, applause all around for them as well. I hate to just say that I'm out there working all by myself and look at me go. These folks, they're there still, and they deserve all the praise in the world for it.
Wow, wow. So, okay. What would you build upon that the current alderman has started? Or yeah, what the incumbent has started? What would you build upon that you liked? And definitely what would you completely change in the third ward or bring to the table that hasn't been done?
Sure. So one of the things that Alderman Nguyen has been, and to her credit, she'll tell you much better than I can about her dedication to our parks and the lakefront. Right now, the Army Corps of Engineers is present. If you've been on the lakefront in the area, you've seen those. They're not even sandbags. They look like some weird sci-fi barricade going along the shoreline, because we're in a real, I think they even use the word catastrophic to describe our shore loss that we're about to experience if we don't, act right now to stem it.
Yeah, it looks a little scary.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I'm like, were we expecting a tsunami coming up in here? Like, what is going on?
And Alderman Nguyen she sees that in a way that that I do appreciate. I obviously think that there's more work to do because the Army Corps of Engineers doesn't come into town just because, right? They don't come knocking to see how you're doing. But I think that focus, it's noble work. It deserves as much effort as we can possibly give it, and it's obviously worth building upon. Now, something that I would completely alter is the mechanisms by which third ward residents have to communicate to their own representation in government. Right now, it's very difficult to get a hold of Alderman Nguyen. I'm in several, just because of being around and doing the work that I do. I'm in a whole bunch of different groups, Facebook and all that good stuff, where folks will bring up really important issues, and there will be a litany. It comes, does anybody have experience in how to get our alderman's ear on this? Maybe even get a response? What's all that then? Like, we really should be able to communicate with our alderman freely. And that's not to disparage Alderman Nguyen or something like that as a person or something, but I think, what we were talking about earlier, it's just part of who I am, that if you hit me up for any reason, you're going to get a response pretty quick. The notion that people are having meetings about how to have a meeting because they can't even get their phone call returned is not, it's not something I see continuing in a Alderman Korzeniowski scenario. And to that end, I don't think I'm being a huge jerk or something in saying that. I think there was a whole candidacy 4 years ago essentially founded on that sentiment. So this is, for somebody not in the third, it probably seems like a weird thing to bring up, but it's weird to me that such an active ward in such an active community, in such an active city, has such an inactive relationship with their immediate representation. I would very much like to change that.
Okay. And before we let you go, Nick, what's the first thing that you plan to do for the city of Evanston if elected alderman?
So I'm going to be honest with you and give you the wonkiest answer in the whole wide world here, because the first thing I would do would be the longest thing to get done, which is why it would be first, is to get the ball rolling on it right away, knowing nothing will come of it for a while. And that's municipal broadband, which is something that I've been an advocate of before I even ran for school board 4 years back. Municipal broadband to me is a way for, first of all of our bottom lines to drop a little bit, because folks like Comcast, RCN would have to compete with the city's own infrastructure to provide things like internet service. Well, that sounds really, really stupid up front to somebody who doesn't have a kid remote learning every single day right now. You need reliable broadband. You have to be paying that bill or your kiddo can't go to school. Well, the city can build out that infrastructure. The city can set rates based on what they see as feasible. Comcast, RC, and these guys, they can compete against the city. That's sort of like the public option that was proposed with the Affordable Care Act. And more to that, when the city's controlling that rate, that means the city can, you know, take a look at somebody that might be in affordable housing, set that rate a little lower for them. Take somebody who's, you know, about to get not even a check, but about to, you know, take one of the dozen folks that might be about to get 25 grand from the banks for reparations. Well, how about the city's also going to align some public policy with people so that they don't need to rely on the banks to give them a down payment on a house? Hey, if you qualify for XYZ, you get to use the city's municipal broadband free of charge. You know, it's a real public good. It is very difficult and very technical, but given the things that I hear get called a public good when they're proposed, you know, it'll be a terraced walkway to this parking lot or something like that. Well, how about high-speed internet that's provided free of charge? Is that a public good that's worthwhile or no? And I honestly, I don't think anybody would be against it. I think it's just such a technical thing that folks haven't tried, but it's the sort of thing that could really, it could even the playing field for resources in schools. It could, which is, you can imagine why I've been fighting for this since I've been running for the school board. It can really level the playing field for a lot of kiddos in town. It drops our bottom line as the parents in town. And it helps competition in town as well. But also, if you're starting up a small business, this is something that if you're starting a small business, you probably know about this without me saying a word, you actually do need a robust internet provision in your business these days. Well, yeah, if the city's providing that, that's one less hurdle to your business starting up. That's one less hurdle to you thriving and coming up in town. So if you're going to say the very first thing that Alderman Korzeniowski took a pen to, it was let's start that, because it'll take a while, and if we don't start now, it's never going to get done. So let's start that right away. That would be the first thing.
So you bring, that's where the technology comes in. When we were talking about at the beginning of our conversation, the very beginning of our conversation is the element that you would bring to this office. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Nick, for your time this evening. I've learned a lot. So now you got me thinking about municipal broadband. You got me.
What's more exciting than that?
But it just shows that your mind is thinking outside the box and you're looking at other ways in which to help people out, business owners, to help everybody out. So I definitely wasn't thinking that. Immediately everyone thinks, oh, you know, yeah, like you had said earlier, take money from Northwestern, let's do this, this, and this. But that takes it to a whole nother level that I don't think anyone is even there thinking about. So thank you. Not only do we need fighters, but we also need people bringing just some new ideas, new concepts, new ways of looking at things, new ways of attacking issues. So thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. So, you know, we'll have you back once, you know, the race really gets going. It's been quite interesting already. So I know it's going to get even more interesting as we get going. So Nick, we will definitely have you back because I'm sure you're going to have some more to say as this race continues.
Oh, for sure. And again, thank you so much for having me tonight. Thank you to anybody watching for your engagement. Even if you hate every last little thing I said today and you will never vote for me in your life, thank you for being engaged. Thank you for participating. It's amazing that we live in a town like this.
And Nick, let people know where they can contact you with questions, comments.
Absolutely. So you can, our Facebook page, facebook.com/Nick43, NICKFOR3. Website is nick43.nationbuilder.com. And the email you can get us at is nick4thirdward@gmail.com.
All right. Thank you. We went over our time, but I've enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. And this has been Malika, Evanston Live TV. That was Nick. He is running for 3rd Ward Alderman, Nick Korzeniowski. Yes. So he's got some broad ideas out there that I mean, I hadn't thought of. I don't know, maybe you've thought of them, but he's already thinking on a whole nother level how to open up the city to some new ideas. So we thank Nick, and you all stay tuned. We'll have him back, and we'll have more candidates coming on. So you all please stay tuned.